can choose to stay the path, or you can choose to explore this new course and what that might mean for you for whatever reason that's triggered it.
I'd like to welcome to the show Denise Roberson. Denise, it's so great to have you here.
So good to be here. I'm so happy to see your beautiful face.
Oh, it's wonderful to see your beautiful face as well. And we did not plan this, so there's
No,
something
we
going on
didn't.
with the color. I love it. I love it. I'd love to start off, Denise, with you. Well, let me say one thing for everyone listening. One of the things that I love about Denise, and one of the reasons why I feel very connected to her as a human being, is she has this incredible inclusion of all of who she is in a really badass leadership persona role, however you want to say it. And that's something that I really admire in you, Denise. And I know that everyone listening, watching will feel that in our conversation. But I just want to start off in saying that you and I have known each other for a few years, and that's something that I love. Like, I feel like I'm talking to the entire person when we're speaking, whether we're speaking about work or whether we're speaking about more personal things. So I would love for you to share with the audience anything that you want them to know about you and who you are, what you've done before we jump into our conversation.
First of all, right back at you. I feel the same way about you. I know when we met, it was kind of like two kindred spirits connecting. So
Mhm.
I feel
Yes.
exactly the same. And I will tell you that part of me didn't come naturally. I spent the
Mm,
early part of my leadership journey. I didn't have any female mentors. I didn't have any female CEO mentors in particular.
mm,
So I was off roading a great deal of the early parts of my career. And one of the things I focused on the most was how do I take this part and how do I take the part of me that's, a civic minded leader and out in the community, and how do I take the daughter and sister and all of those things and bring them to the table every time. Early days, I didn't feel so comfortable doing that. I felt like I had to dress a certain way and behave a certain way. And oh no, no emotions are coming into the boardroom. And now I'm more apt to have, 4-inch heels that are bright red, and you're going to be met with a hug, and then I'll go
mm.
kick your butt in the boardroom.
Yeah,
So
I
it's been
love
a
that.
it's been a journey. It's been a
Was
journey.
say a little bit about the industry you're in and what you have, you've been in it for a few
Yeah,
years. So
this
what
could
have you
this could take a
experienced?
whole podcast
Okay, well,
because
just like,
I am a lifelong learner. I am a naturally very curious person, and it's taken me a minute to realize everything I gravitate towards is how can I help people be their best selves? How can I help the community in times of need? And how can I help our planet? So, what
Mm,
started as advertising, I mean, literally classic advertising. It was what I was educated in. It's where I began my entrepreneurial, journey, and it dawned on me early on, I've got this giant megaphone. All of us in advertising do. Why
mm,
aren't we using this to do better things in the world? It
mm.
doesn't mean it has to be bad business. It can be great business, but we can also help people. We can bring awareness to incredible things. Please excuse the barking Great Dane. You may hear them saying hello with their guest appearance. And
It's part of being human, right?
there we go. They're here. And that's really where the tipping point came for me with how do I use this tool, this megaphone, to do great by my clients, but also to do better in the world at large. So that
Mm,
evolved into sitting on more boards. So I do a lot of board work, I do a lot of community service work. That in turn pushed me more towards academia. So I've been a professor for about the last 9 years, which was very unexpected. That was sort of
mm,
like, whenever I retire someday, I'd love to do this. And someday found me much earlier and caught me off
mm,
guard. But it was a natural part of me that fuels me in a completely different way. So it's a
mm,
part of my life that I get so much back from. And I learn just as much from my students as they learn from me. And I love it. But most recently, I was serving as Omnicom and TBWA's Chief Purpose Officer. It was a role that was made for me. And here's the punchline. It started January 1st of 2020. So I was in office for, just a few months before a global pandemic was upon us. And that became sort of this training ground for proving this discipline. How does purpose, ESG, sustainability, CSR, all these wonderful acronyms, how do they work as a value driver for organizations?
Mm.
And I will say those early days, it was a lot of crisis management. Companies didn't know how to help their employees. They didn't know how to
Right.
help their customers. So it was a unique time where we were building the plane while flying it while in crisis. So
Right.
we learned a lot. And what we did find out is the beauty was they have so many incredible clients, Apple and Google and Sephora, and just iconic brands.
Hmm.
And they all needed very similar things. So it was a great time to sort of prove this concept out.
Mm.
But having done that, and with the industry changing, I've actually gone back to my entrepreneurial roots. And I
Wow.
just kicked off as the newly minted CEO of Figure Eight Funding. And that has
Mm.
been such a departure. But the key learning with that was I sort of got wrapped up in this idea I had to be a chief purpose officer to do purpose. And
Hmm.
it's just not true.
That's really interesting, right? Because I would imagine some people listening are going, wow, how does she have the energy to do all this? How does she get all this done, right? But one of the things I want to highlight in what you said is there was what I pick up is there's a following of your joy, a following of your own purpose in
Yeah.
this, and looking for those areas that and it can change. Now, sometimes that deep purpose doesn't necessarily change, but how it's expressed in the world can
Exactly.
change. And I love what you said about, you thought that the way that you were going to achieve how you expressed your purpose in the world is in this chief purpose
Yeah.
officer. And say a little bit more about the Figure Eight funding. I'd love to hear it.
So
I don't know that much about it.
yeah, it's because it's brand new and it's
Okay.
happening in real time. So a 25-year friendship, we connected. She was telling me she was doing this concierge service, helping people get access to 0% interest funding. Fascinating. Okay, this is great. A couple more 3-hour dinners. And all of a sudden, what we're realizing is she has the ability to create a business model that's access to funding for women entrepreneurs,
Mhm.
businesses of color, the people who are getting that 2% metric that
Right.
frustrates me to the core of my being. So when I started reading more, and it's something I've been engaged with for a long time, a lot of the board work I do is centered around creating access, equality, all those wonderful things that are in jeopardy right now. So once we realized if we digitize this, we can lower the barrier to entry and we can help people that are in the conception phase. They're just thinking
Mhm.
about starting a business because this 2% going to women business owners, that's 98% that's not going to them.
Right.
And I thought,
Right.
oh my goodness, to be able to help them in a way that number one gets the risk off of their personal credit. And for me, having done
Right.
it that way, and
Right.
every time payroll would come up, I would be shaking in my boots and what of my personal
Right.
assets do I have to sell today? To all of a sudden porting it from the very beginning onto a business entity. So your personal assets are not at risk. You're not putting your home up as
Right.
collateral and just allowing these incredible entrepreneurs, small businesses, whether they're looking to start the business, scale the business, or invest, it creates a runway for them at 0%. So you're not leveraged to the nines. I remember my
Right.
first SBA loan where it was like, how am I going to pay this back? And it was
Right.
necessary. The company was growing. We needed
Right.
it.
Right.
But there was no way of getting around the fact that it was difficult every month. So
Right.
when I started seeing the solution,
Wow.
realizing we could digitize it, bring it to more people, it just sort of started to feel like this was another part of my purpose. It was sort of yearning to get back to my entrepreneurial roots, to get more
Right.
hands on. I wanted to touch it and be a part of it and build something and help all these people. So I've been super
E-
excited.
it's really interesting because a lot of I work with men and women, but a lot, especially the women recently that I work with, are going through a really big transition. And now I tend to work with people between like 40 and 60 and incredibly successful at what they do, as you are. And there's this sense of there's something else, right? Like they're feeling that sense of if maybe they can identify what their purpose is, and maybe it's not being fully expressed, but sometimes it's just this feeling of there's something else and I can't quite put my finger on it. So I would love for you to highlight because you talked about your journey and at the beginning, you weren't really it sounds to me, correct me if I'm wrong, but it sounds like you were doing it the way that that current paradigm expected you to do it, right? And you're smart enough to read the signs and be able to translate and be able to know how to show up. Was there a moment or a series of moments where that transition happened? And just asking for anyone who's listening who might be in that
Yeah.
place of something like I'm successful, I'm doing great. Externally, everyone's like, "Oh my gosh, you must love your life. Like this is amazing. You love this job." But they're feeling like there's something. So can you speak to your moment in that part of the journey?
I've had a few of them in all honesty, and that lifelong learning curiosity, it has a tendency to wade me into territory where I start to question things. And when that starts to
Mm.
happen, if I can't shake it and I can't let go of that inkling, something's not adding up, or I'm ready for more. Those are the moments, those are those transition times where I would say great things. One came from complete trauma. I was very sick
Mm.
and my life was in jeopardy. And I just remember getting well and thinking, this is it. I'm going to sell things to
No.
people for the rest of my life. Like, no, I refuse. So that sort of sparked that internal
Mm.
getting back to my roots. And that came from my family. They're very civic minded, they're very community oriented. And it really pushed me into a direction where I realized, where am I most alive? Where am I
Right.
excited?
Where
What are
am
the
I most alive?
yeah,
Yeah.
what are the
Love
things
that.
I'm doing in the day that I am looking forward to and counting down the minutes
Yeah.
until I get to do them? So I started paying really close attention to that feeling.
Yeah.
I would came up the old school. I was a really good mimic. So I could
Me
I
too,
could I could
Denise.
parrot or replicate anything. Like that's what a CEO looks like. That's what I'm going to be. And it just wasn't serving me. And what I was getting was a lot of feedback from clients. I was getting feedback from my employees saying, you know, a year in, 2 years in, 5 years in, I wish I would have known this version of you in the beginning. I was terrified of you.
Mm.
I was whatever of you. And I had no
Mm.
idea that your heart was bigger than anything. And all of
Wow.
these ingredients I thought I needed to sort of keep tucked away. Like, nope, they
Right.
can't see that part. Nope, they can't see that part.
It's really
But
interesting, right? If you look at it just big picture, it's just incredibly interesting that and I get it. I can left brain can explain
yeah,
the paradigm and how it was set up and what success looked like up until that moment. And the fact that, early on there weren't as many women, so there wasn't as much of that energy
yeah,
in the space. I mean, there's a whole lot of logical reasons for it, but it is quite interesting when I think about it and I think about myself and also listening to you is why did I feel I had to
yeah,
abandon parts of me? Wait a minute. Isn't that the whole point? I mean, when I'm working with clients, it's like you are unique. There is no one else like you on this planet. There's no one else like you. So part of your gift, part of your expression, part of your service, part of your success is that uniqueness of who you are, right? And you speak to a health crisis. I've definitely seen that. I often will get people coming after some sort of a health crisis, but you also said that there were a couple different moments. So was there another time space
yes,
yeah.
yes. I had started this agency, founded it from the beginning with a few partners, and it was incredible. And I felt like that was my baby.
Hmm.
But I started to outgrow my baby, and I struggled immensely with that because I just thought, am I abandoning, this team that's been with me so long, that's
Right.
dedicated everything? And the truth was the reckoning was I was ready to grow. I was staying for them, not for me. And that was
Right.
a bad reason to be doing
So
something.
how did you come to that realization? Because
That
I think that
that
you're
excitement.
not alone. Okay, the
Yeah, that
excitement. Okay.
excitement of, what I was talking about earlier. I can't wait to do this. I can't wait to be a part of this. It's like rocket
Mm.
fuel. it was dwindling and it became
Yeah.
more of a duty, a
Right.
necessity, words that I don't want to use to describe
Right.
my passion. So it took a lot of reflecting. It took
Mm,
stepping back and engaging in some other things for me to really have a perspective to say, I actually don't think I'm the best leader for this organization right now.
right.
So it was a long process, but once I got there, it was pretty obvious I was ready to grow and try something on a global stage, which
Right.
at the moment seemed like the dream job. It had all the check boxes. And boy, have I learned a thing or two about those boxes.
Hmm.
If you're not
Hmm.
putting the qualitative with the quantitative in those boxes, you can get yourself in real trouble because on
Mm,
paper, that was the dream job. And in
right.
reality, I left out things like my heart, what
Mm,
made me happy and excited, the way I loved to lead didn't necessarily align with a publicly traded Fortune 200 company. So,
right.
what should have been the best situation of my life left me a little empty, left me a little
Mm,
yearning for that. Oh, I want to get my hands back, on these things and personally interact with all of these different moments. And
right.
so there was yet another reckoning of perhaps I want to get smaller again and be able to serve people individually again, which I hadn't been doing for quite some time. So I think would have actually not perfected, but the journey that I'm on is to really stay in tuned for those moments of alert, attention, things are shifting, and you can choose
Right.
to stay the path or you can choose to explore this new course and what that might mean for you for whatever reason that's triggered it. And for me, 9 times out of 10, it's an emotional trigger. It's something that's popped up that's kind of calling to me, whispering
Right.
in the ear and saying, hey, I'm over here. So I
Would you
listened
use
to that
would
much
you use
faster.
the word intuition?
I
Yeah.
absolutely
Okay.
would use the word
That's what it
intuition.
sounds like as you're describing it. It sounds like an intuition, an intuitive hit, an intuitive nudge to go in a different direction. And I want, you know, a lot of people, and it's interesting, even speaking to my kids, a lot of people have that sensation that they are signing up for something and they're signing up for life, right? There's a fear in saying yes to something and like, what if it doesn't work out? What if I don't like it? What if it's not my dream job? What if it, what if? And the fear a lot of time will stop them from actually taking the action. And what I love about what you're describing in your stories, you're describing how you're listening to that intuitive nudge. You're saying yes when it feels like it's aligned. And at the same time, you continue to do that, right? And it might look different down the road. Look, as we grow and as we learn more, as we expand our ability and for how we express, how we serve in the world can change. And so if we lock ourselves into thinking, or I just, I just told one of my younger kids, just say yes if that feels right now. You're going to learn something from it. You'll
Yeah.
learn what you like, you'll learn what you don't like, and then that will help you to be better informed for that next step. And I think you're describing that, that journey of I thought it was going to look like this. I thought this was my dream job. Well, oops, I forgot about this. And it is a constant
It
learning
is.
journey.
It is. And
And
it's all about the and, not the it's you can do both in tandem, in parallel. You can do both and actually figure out which one of these feels more authentic to me. But listening to that intuition, that's something that took a little bit of work. I heard it.
Mhm.
I always heard it loud and clear. Whether I listened, that was a whole different
Right,
story. So I think I listen much more quickly now. If I
right,
get the inkling, I'm much more apt to dial right into that as opposed to like, shh, go away. You're
yeah,
distracting me. Stop. No more whispers.
right. I'm on the path. I don't
You're,
want to be, I don't
I
want to
know
get,
where I'm going. Stop it. So I think in
I'm,
that particular term, it serves you well to just realize, take your hands off the wheel. If it's the message is coming in, it's coming in for a reason, and dial in for a minute and explore. At least give
right.
yourself that.
Yeah, at least give yourself that chance to explore, right? And be able to test out. You don't always have to take a huge leap. A lot of my clients will start something on the side, even while they're staying in their current role, just to see, does this really thrill me? Is this something that I could devote a a larger majority of
Yeah.
of my time, energy, resources in that. So when you look back from where you are now and you reflect back on your journey, and you've mentioned a couple different times, I wish that I had paid attention to my intuition a little bit earlier. I wish that I had, brought my heart into this role, or I wish that I had considered that type of thing. When you reflect back, because you're obviously a lifelong learner, Denise, when you reflect back, what do you feel for you personally in your look? I'm not going to separate professional and personal
Yeah.
because I think they're intertwined, right?
Good luck with that.
We are who we are when we show up. But when you reflect back, what would you say are the two or three most essential learnings that you feel you have had in your journey?
I think one of them came recently, and that was I always thought it fed one way. My family was the impetus for everything I was bringing to the world. And I didn't realize that it's not linear, it's circular. So the
Mm,
things I was learning now, I've got a changing family dynamic, and I'm able to bring those things back to my family. So this
right.
sort of circularity of
Mm,
learnings has been so beneficial in
mm,
being able at these different various stages to bring some of that back to the fold. And I
wow.
don't think I ever considered it quite in that way. And
Mm,
this notion of energy has been another really big one. So leaving this huge job that I was held up as, the female executive that was winning the race and the single female in the boardroom. And there was a lot of pressure that was sort of put on, you can't quit, you're representing. And I am a
right.
very loyal Chinese metal dog who takes that job very seriously. So I thought, I can't let all these people down. But what I
Mm,
realized was when it was getting sort of clogged and dysfunctional, it was because it was meant to be elsewhere. And
mm,
sort of allowing myself to realize I can still do that and I can still represent and I can still be a part of all of these things. And if you look at the board seats I'm occupying, you'll just giggle because it's this huge continuum of stuff and doesn't really follow a pattern. It's just like
okay.
my heart goes there, my heart goes there. But it wasn't until I stopped and got really quiet and slowed everything down to a trickle that I realized my energy is not supposed to be there,
Mm,
and really decided to sort of retract some of it and call it back so I could put it
right.
elsewhere where it was more needed. And my 30-year-old self would never have had the clarity or the boldness to say, this is mid stride and I'm cutting it off right here and I'm passing it to very capable hands
Mm,
because I need to put this somewhere else. And that's sort of a key learning of recent times
yeah, that's a
that I've
big one.
really enjoyed in the way that we all have these gifts, we all have something to contribute, but boy, do you have to have your tuning fork on to know where it's
Right,
best served.
right.
So just because you can
Absolutely.
do something doesn't mean you have to continue doing something. You're allowed to reclaim it, place it elsewhere.
Well, and I love that you brought up the word energy because it's something I talk a lot about. Is something that I'm just one of those people I can feel it, sense it, see it. I use it in the work that I do. I use it in my own personal life. I can feel it when I walk into a room. I can feel it in talking to someone. One of the questions I ask people when I first meet them, if it's a work related meeting, is what do they love the most about what they do?
Yeah.
And that for me, it's important because I now sometimes it might fall a little flat, and
Right.
then they recognize it as they're saying it.
Yes.
As they're saying it back, I don't even have to say anything. They recognize that it's like something feels a little bit off on that. But thankfully for me, a lot of times as I'm navigating, if I ask that question, there's the light, the lights light up. There's an energy that you can feel. It doesn't mean that everything's perfect. No. You know, you've described some ups and downs in your journey. It's not that it's perfect. I want people to hear that, as we're speaking. We're not going for perfection. I
No,
think that's something that I've learned over the years is I thought if you do it a certain way, everything will line up and it will be perfect. Well, that's one of the things I've learned. That's not the case. So if it's not going to ever be perfect, what can I do to enjoy the journey?
right.
Right.
That's
And I can tell you have your eyes are lit up. You have a big smile on your face. You're enjoying the journey. So for anyone who's listening who maybe anyone listening and or also your students, if there's ever that feeling of I don't know if I don't know if I really am loving what I'm doing. I don't know if that's where I want to put my energy. What would you say to them?
I think the most successful I've been at making those transitions, especially something like career, parenting, some of the big hitters, try other things. And it doesn't mean quit your job and run
Mm,
out and do this other stuff, but
yeah.
I have found a lot of different areas where I've gotten to touch things and experience them. Community events,
Yeah.
advisory boards, donating time, literally showing
Hmm.
up and touching something and being a part of it. Academia, school. I
Yeah.
have a tendency to
Yeah.
run back to school every time I want to really work out something. And I would say that because the students that I've been teaching are senior executives in an MBA program, they're looking for something. So I get that quite a bit. They'll go through the program and all of a sudden they realize, I'm
Yeah.
unhappy. This is not
Yeah.
what I want to be doing. And I
It's
teach
like the eyes
purpose.
open up, right?
And I happen to teach purpose in a marketing module. So that's one of those crazy moments where I get a lot of eyebrow raises like, isn't this an MBA course? What are you doing? And by the end, those skeptics are literally the very same people saying, thank you. I had no idea I was
Mm.
missing this, both in my career and in my life. So
Wow.
I got a lot of pushback for that early days,
Right,
but it
right.
is one of the favorite segments that people gravitate towards.
Well, and it's underlining that taking a little bit of time to go inward. And a lot of times people are so busy. There's so much happening. There's so much personally and professionally that's happening. But going inward and asking, what brings me joy? Where do I feel good? Where do I feel in flow? Where do I feel aligned? What matters to me? What are my values? Those types of questions, which all get at in different ways, that purpose. It requires a pause. Wouldn't you agree? Yeah.
Not only does it require a pause, for me, I will speak in I terms, I had to unplug, I had to
Oh
disconnect
yeah.
because I was so loaded with so many things that I was doing and I had so many balls in the air. I couldn't ever get out of mode in order to just be in nature and
Yes.
not listening to a podcast and not doing something and multitasking. I had to actually just bring it down and
Yeah.
go for a good hike, get out on the beach, whatever it was.
Right.
Diving is a big thing for me. I love being under the water with my bubbles. So,
Really?
yeah, that's like,
When,
you want to actually hear
oh
me
my
like in
gosh.
my purest self with my own thoughts. It's reverberating with my
Wow.
own little bubbles, and I can't talk to a person. So I am so in like flow at that
Wow.
exact moment. So
Where's the last
diving,
place you went diving?
Maui.
Wow.
Yeah, it's been, and that's been a lifelong sort of, crossing off those dream list items
Mm-hmm.
and just getting to explore a brand new world.
Mm.
For me, as someone who enjoys multitasking, loves to do the things that my heart pulls me towards,
Mm-hmm.
it also requires me to have moments of being able to unplug and
Yeah.
really refuel. Because if I don't, I'm running depleted on that red line constantly.
100%.
And I'll
Yeah.
give it to everyone else and then
Yeah.
forget to check in on myself
Oh yeah.
and be like, why is it Monday morning? I
That.
physically can't function. My brain's not firing. It's like, did you check
Yeah.
in with you over the weekend? Of course you didn't.
But that's so interesting because that comes up all the time. I hear this all the time, especially from
Yeah.
women leaders, women entrepreneurs. And there's a underlying sense that somehow it's selfish. Would you resonate with that? Yeah,
Absolutely.
like somehow I'm a good person and I'm doing good if I'm helping, elderly parents, children, significant other, community, school, like all over the team, all over the place. And I get a lot of pushback on that particular one of offering a suggestion of some quiet space. And nature is amazing for a lot of different reasons. So I look, and it doesn't have to. I mean, if you live in New York City, there are plants. There's a park. There's like
Absolutely.
there are ways. No
It's
matter where
everywhere.
you are, you don't have to be in out in the middle of nowhere. But the quiet that you talk about is important. And that is really if I get someone to agree to have a little bit of space for themselves, it's funny you mentioned the podcast because then they'll often want to add something that let's say in quotes, productive.
Ah.
Whether it's a podcast, a book on tape, finishing up some phone calls that they hadn't gotten to, or
We're
dictating.
hardwired. We are hardwired for efficiency. And it's like,
Right.
no.
Right. And it's so interesting. And I'd love to hear your experience on this because I've seen myself and also a ton of my clients where once you trust that process and you're able to get into whatever your zone is. For me, it's often hiking. If I am near water, warm water, I don't dive, but do you know what one of the things, and this doesn't happen that often, is going underwater when there are whales and
Oh,
dolphins near me. My whole body just,
I
I mean,
just just did this and I got
did
to
you?
tell you, it,
It is. It's amazing,
yeah.
right? And look, we aren't going to be able to do that every single day. So we need to have
No,
other options. I tell people you got to have a lot of different options for depending on what that day looks like. But one of the things that I'd love to hear your experience on this, what I notice and what I would say my clients who finally trust this process and do it is they actually find that everything else is much more smooth and much more
absolutely.
efficient. So you notice, okay, yeah,
You don't realize if you're not checking in constantly where you're running in terms of your energy meter because it's all going out and you're not bringing any of it back.
right,
So
right.
I think it really takes that moment of pause and that moment of refueling and intentionality. I had a fantastic coach who was so much more than that. I wouldn't even be able to find the words, but
Mm,
he got me into a great practice of scheduling. Like, that's
mm,
your time. Don't
yeah,
you dare fill it.
yep,
And when it's
yep,
down on the calendar, unless it's life or death, you're
yeah,
not moving it from that
yeah,
calendar. And
yeah.
you best not be doing something productive in that time. Let
Right.
your mind rest, let it go
Yeah.
elsewhere.
Yeah.
Use those quiet moments for reflection. You're
Yeah.
not going to be able to innovate. You're not going to be at your best. And you certainly won't be able to give at capacity. And that's what finally got
Right.
me.
I was going to say that's what gets my clients,
Yeah.
Denise, but I want to help this, da, 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 all that stuff. And I say, well, you're never going to be able to serve at your greatest
Yeah.
capacity unless you're taking care of yourself.
Which is
And
hard.
they're
Yeah.
like,
It's
oh,
hard. Don't think that it just comes
right. It
naturally and
doesn't
that you're
come
going to
natural.
go, yeah, I'm going to
Yeah.
do that. And this is what I'm
Yeah.
scheduling. It changed my life because what
Yeah.
I realized was it took me a bit of time to be able to see the byproducts, the really positive byproducts that were coming from it. It didn't happen in a week of like, oh, this is wonderful and so good. I struggled. I was like, look at all these things I'm not doing. Look at all these
Right.
things that I could be so much more efficient. And the
Right.
lies, they were lies I was telling myself. So it took a while of scheduling and being committed to that to finally have
Right.
enough space to go, wait a minute.
Right.
I am coming at this a bit more refreshed. I am
Yeah.
coming at this with more energy, not less
And
energy.
more creative ideas. That
Yes.
I get my most creative ideas when I'm on a hike by myself, not listening to anything.
Yep.
Right.
That's
Like
it.
that's back to the listen, back to the multitasking piece. And all of a sudden you're like, oh my God, it's space. I tell people it's space. You're allowing space for wonderful things to happen. If you
Yeah.
don't allow that space, you're actually keeping away the things that you haven't even become aware of yet. that are either important or they're creative ideas, they're new ways of looking at things. It's a fresh perspective, whatever it is. Um, and the scheduling on the calendar, I do that with my clients as well.
Yeah.
And I do it for myself. And what I put on there, I don't know what you put on yours. I tell people use whatever's going to really resonate with you, but I put play because for me, I put play because that has been the thing that I never felt that I could do as a grown up is play.
I love that. It's beautiful. Mine, it had a little bit more irony
Let's hear.
because I needed to have a little laughter in my life.
But
Mine
that's
says
what
gone,
everyone needs
yeah,
it.
mine says gone fishing. So I don't fish
Perfect.
at all.
But it's the energy of it, right?
That is
Yeah.
it. Like gone fishing, don't
I love
call.
it.
I'll be back when exactly when I told you I will be, and I will get done everything that I committed to, and
I
all of
love
that will be
that.
fine and well. But when that gone fishing sign's out or it's my autoresponder, everyone's like, oh, she's gone, gone. Like, don't even
Gone,
bother.
gone.
Yeah.
She's not faking it.
Nope, nope, she's out. She's out. But, it took me a minute to realize I got to clean out all the clutter in the space before something
Correct.
new could come in. And
Right.
now that I'm in
Right.
the practice of doing that, it serves me really well. Like this last evolution, you couldn't have paid me to actually, you couldn't have put me through a million classes to say I would go in that direction. Like that was
Hmm.
not any bingo card,
Hmm.
but it was like, I felt it so authentically and this need. I have so many women entrepreneur friends that are their life savings is in the middle of something. They have a brilliant innovation, a brilliant idea, and the only thing holding them back is funding. And like it just became
Hmm.
this pet peeve of mine, this personal angst of this is so wrong. And these people
Right.
have so much to give and to contribute. And this one thing is stopping them. And it just,
Right.
I literally, the first couple conversations, I was like, happy to help, but absolutely no, that's not what I'm doing. And then the more I got into it, the more I realized, oh, this is absolutely aligned with my purpose, just in a package
Hmm.
I never imagined.
Oh, I love that. Just in a package you never imagined. I love that. So let me ask you this, because I said I ask this of people quite often, and it changes over time too. What do you love the most about what you're doing right now?
It's so new and it's so fresh, but I will say, watching people have this aha moment of I can. All the I can'ts, it's not possible. This is a roadblock. This is a roadblock. That moment where the first click starts to happen and it's going in the right direction, where all of a sudden they realize their possibilities are infinite.
Hmm.
My heart
Uh,
literally stops with joy. Like it's
hmm.
skipping a beat. And there's something in that with someone realizing, even if it's generational coding that they can't, the empowerment piece
Hmm.
of, oh, yes, I can. And
Right.
not only that, I'm not dependent on anyone else. I can do this
Yeah.
is the
Oh,
moment
I
that
love that.
I will never tire of. I will never not get so excited. I want to jump up and down and scream with them. Like it's that moment of, for every young woman who grew up with the, oh, girls don't do that. Oh,
Right.
that's not for you. Your husband will do that someday. All of this bizarre coding that
Right. That's
we get
there. Yeah.
subjected to,
Yeah.
that moment where someone realizes I can, I will, and
Hmm.
I am. Ooh, I love it.
That's so exciting.
Yeah, that's my favorite.
You know, when I mean, you're obviously someone who is wanting to change the current paradigm, and while we are in a moment of
Wow.
chaos, we're in a moment of change, like whether you want change or not, it's happening. So be prepared. Um, when you think about your journey, when you think about where we are right now in the world, I'd love to hear what you're most hopeful for in the future.
It's going to take me a second to get here because it's evolving in real time.
That's
I would say most people that work in purpose or impact right now are in a state of devastation. They're afraid. They don't know what is going to happen. We've seen contracts disappear overnight. We've seen people's livelihoods destroyed, DEI just like thrown out the window and abandoned. These, and not only that, we've got natural disasters that are occurring
right.
at such speed that this isn't going to just go away tomorrow. Like we're in this kind of state of chaos
Right.
with things happening on multiple levels that are affecting
Mm.
us as a community, as a nation, as a world, and
In
it's not.
relationships, in families,
That's it.
there's
And we
so
go all
much.
the way from
Yeah.
the microcosm to this
Yeah.
macrocosm and everywhere in between. But what I'm realizing is it's taken some really epic leaders to shift the mindset. And so all of these people that were feeling like, I don't even know if I have a job. I don't even know if there's going to be a contract. I gave everything up to do this. And some great folks were able to sort of help shift the narrative to, isn't all of this about having a long-term view? Didn't you
Right.
get into this because you're tired of the
Right.
short-termism of it all? Guess what? Now you've
Guess
got a
what?
couple years to really make it
Yeah.
strong and to build the foundation and to realize we absolutely can have impact. We can make change. It just has to be at a foundational level until the time is right to have this blossom in the world. And coming from Southern California, watching the devastation of fires, I know you are also a Pepperdine
Hmm.
person. I mean, just looking at PCH and the
Yeah.
Pacific Palisades, like there are
Right.
areas that are just gone.
Right.
And I have friends that have lost everything in these fires, but watching the community come together, watching the humanity of it all,
Mm.
where people are willing to just reach their, I mean, I was reaching my hand out to people I'd never met in my life saying, I have a home that's safe. If you need
Right.
a place to be, come be here. You know, it's
Right.
not going to be perfect.
Right.
You'll be you'll be in a safe place and you can just start to rebuild.
Mm.
And seeing that become the catalyst for the tipping point of change, there's beauty in that. Out of this
Yeah.
incredible tragedy, there are these little seeds of beauty that are starting to show up that I do believe will bring people together in a way that we haven't seen in recent years. And I'm
Yeah.
really hopeful about that.
I love that. I agree with you on that. I think one of the things and one of my inspirations to do this podcast is really about, there are a lot of challenging things at many different levels,
Yeah.
and they're happening faster and they're not going away. Like a lot of them aren't going away right away. Um, and people can feel lost about and hopeless.
Yeah.
And I believe, just as you said, I believe that there is an opportunity, and I'm hopeful for some really beautiful things, connections, really leaning into the humanity, really leaning into all of who we are. We talk about that a lot in leadership. You and I talked about this off air. We talk about it in leadership, what it means to be an authentic or whole leader. I don't think it fully gets expressed a lot of times. It's still a little bit scary, but we are humans, and there's something really incredible about that part of it in all of we do. And as humans, we want to be connected. We want to feel that we matter. We want to love and be loved. And I don't just mean romantic love. I mean all sorts of love.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Love for the planet, love for another human being, just as being a human being on this planet with us. So I think there is a lot of opportunity for that going forward. And I love hearing that in your journey,
Yeah.
in your up and down journey, that you see that as well. I think that's something we connect on. Um, I want to ask you if anyone wants to know more about what you're doing in the world, whether it's this new project or anything else. Well, how can they get a hold of you, Denise?
I am easily findable on LinkedIn. It's
Okay,
just Denise Roberson. It's straightforward. If you want to check out the new website, it's figure the number eight
love it.
funding.com. Got to have that infinity sign in there.
I love
So
it.
yeah, and we help everyone. We focus on women and people of color and minority owned businesses, but the truth is we're able to help anyone. That is not like you're not excluded
Right.
if you happen to
It's
be
just
one
your
or the other.
highlight.
It's just where we have seen where people need the most help and they're getting the least amount of funding. So that is where we wanted to
Mm,
start. But if you're an entrepreneur just kind of looking for, I don't know where to
mm,
start, we're there for you as well. There's
love
no
it.
disclusion in the way we approach this, but I'm happy to have conversations with people. If there are people that feel like they're stuck and somehow want to just explore how to get to another place in their life, in their business, in their fill in the blank, I think it's going to take all of us literally
Yeah.
leaning in and offering a hand to get to a different place than we are right now, and to create
Yeah.
that connectivity, to get rid of the loneliness, and to just realize people care. I mean, at the epicenter, I
Mm,
think loving humans are at the core of all of this. And if we, even when we're scared, I will tell you some of the fire victim things. I felt like, what can I possibly say or do to someone
mm,
or for someone that just lost everything? So I just started giving hugs. Like
yeah.
that's what I could do. And people would just melt. And it started a
Right.
dialogue on a completely different footing. So if you're sort of in a
Yeah.
space where you feel like, I don't know what I can do, take the simplest of steps.
Yeah.
Sometimes just showing up is a great step.
Sometimes just being human. Being human, being, that
Yes,
being, it's not always a doing, being in that space with another human who's going through whatever they're going through
that's it.
is actually incredibly powerful.
Yeah.
So thank you so much, Denise. I really
Oh, this
appreciate
has
you
been a joy.
sharing your heart, sharing a little bit of your journey. And I'm just so grateful that you came on the show and shared with us.
With pleasure. I adore you and I love what you're doing in the world. And anyone that's lucky enough to work with you as a coach, my goodness, what a
Oh,
gift. What a gift.
thank you. Thank you, Denise. I appreciate it so much. Have a wonderful day, everyone.